Hello and welcome back to another episode of Fintech Focus TV with me, Toby. And today I am absolutely delighted to bring to you Anvar Karimson of Kepler Cheuvreux. Anvar, how are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you? Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Listen, lovely to see you, and great to see someone who's absolutely thriving in a relatively new role still. It is a role which I love. It's one of my favourite titles that we've got with Chief Technology Innovation Officer, because if there has ever been a stage where we've seen more innovation over a sustained period, it's been the last 12 to 18 months, and I love the sort of the theory and the thought process and why this role's come about and what you're bringing to the company. So we'll dive into all of that in a minute. But before we do that, give us a little bit of background, if you would, about yourself and Kepler Cheuvreux.
Absolutely, and I'll start with Kepler Cheuvreux. So we are an independent leading European financial services company. We specialize in research, execution, fixed income and credit, structured solutions, corporate finance, and asset management. So we do a little bit of everything. But at its heart is certainly our research and execution product. In terms of my background, so I've been in the financial services space for a long time now, and predominantly specializing in the electronic trading space. So I'm still sort of learning the ropes when it comes to research, but it's a very exciting area for me, and I'm thrilled to be part of this journey.
You're right. It is a very interesting area, isn't it? And I think Kepler's a fascinating company because it's got, a really interesting reach in terms of its geographies and locations, and it's got really interesting, I guess, go to market with the various different areas that it's in there. So for someone like you who's able to sort of come in there with your background and add to the party, so to speak, and have the party add to you at the same time, I think that's a really good blend and good mix, and something that's very exciting for you to be able to take further forward as well, I think.
Absolutely. And I think the bit that excites me about the role is around the innovation aspect. I think that for my role certainly is obviously not to come in and provide all the ideas, but it's more about providing a support framework and guidance to bring forth the innovation that's already in the organization. Because one thing I've really noticed is that everyone has their own ideas. Everyone has great ideas when it comes to improving their own workflows, new products, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really about just structuring the process of taking an idea from inception to deployment, really. We have an internal saying, which is technology is more than just IT. IT for us is a department, whereas technology is everywhere. And it's something that we definitely take to heart, where everyone is expected to contribute their ideas and to contribute to the, I guess, wider technology roadmap that is for us. So in summary, I'm almost like a internal cheerleader, where we try to really encourage people to bring out their ideas and help them to manifest in better experiences for our clients. Ultimately, one of the frameworks that we use here, one of the processes that I really like is called impact mapping, which is a strategic planning technique, which has been great for us so far. And the benefit here is that we take into account the dynamic relationships between people, other projects, and also the whole organization. A lot of these sort of frameworks are very tied to treating innovation as a bubble, whereas actually there's a lot of things that are happening around the world. You can't really tell everyone else to pause while we deliver these innovation projects. So it's really been great for us in that sense. And also the focus has to be the impact of the delivery. So a lot of the issues we're facing with innovation in general, I think, is that they become very fluid in what they are, and everyone's sort of pitching in on their ideas because, as I said in the beginning, everyone has their ideas, but I think that the impact needs to come first. So something what we do from our perspective is that we start looking at the impact that we want to move. Let's say, for instance, we want more people to read our research, or we want to target our research better to our clients, as an example. So that's the impact. And then we start working backwards from that to say, these are the levers we think can affect that impact. And so we work backwards from that. And it's a conversation that a lot of people are involved in. So it's very important that it's not just sales being involved. It's not just business being involved. It's not just project management or technology or IT being involved. Everyone needs to be part of this, because it's a journey that everyone's going to embark on. And for us, it's been very successful. It's still very early days, but it has been very beneficial already, where we've managed to bring sales together with client management, together with people who know research very well, to come up with these very, very, very strategic ideas for us. But we now have numbers and levers in how we can affect those, the delivery of that stream. And I think also when everyone in a project understand the objectives, the expected impacts, and the key assumptions in the same way, I think that's quite transformative in how we deliver that project, because everyone feels that sort of sense of ownership in the success of that project. And because we're all measuring it the same way, we can all agree that whether an initiative has been successful or not. So I think that's something that's very exciting to me, at least. I think that Kepler has been a great organization to embrace this, because if you look at how we structure our workflows, for instance, a lot of it sits with the business units themselves. So the business units are responsible for improving their own workflow, and not all of our business units have direct attachment to IT, because that's just not how we are structured. But what that means is that we've sort of transformed that to something very beneficial for us, where it has really challenged us to come up with tools and systems where business users themselves can improve their own workflows without necessarily having to go out and start an IT project. And you look at areas like low code, for instance, which is growing hugely in the last few months. And we are huge believers in that aspect, where already we're seeing some very complicated workflows internally, especially in the auditing and compliance space, which have been designed completely without IT, which is quite interesting, really, because just a few years ago, that would be, a big no-no for a lot of companies. So I think that's been great, and the feedback we've received so far has been very, very good, and it's something that we will be ramping up more and more throughout the year.
Yeah, I think that there's so much we can get into in that area, and we'll come to that in a second. I think I've loved what you spoke about. I think on one stage you said it's interesting to me, at least. Well, it's also me in there as well. I'll add myself to that party, because I think innovation is one of those words that has been thrown around a lot for a long time in technology. But I think you've just sort of summed it up spectacularly there in terms of innovation is quite often seen in tech, in particularly in my mind, there's a sort of top-down sort of play, and people are coming up with this sort of creative maverick at the top who's coming up with these sort of weird and wonderful ideas, and then it gets sort of assimilated into how it can be used, how this can be used to solve problems. But I love the way you sort of put it there in a sort of pretty formulaic manner, to say, right, what are we actually trying to do? What's the outcome, and how can we then build backwards to make sure we're doing solving business problems. And I think in fintech, and I've seen this and sort of had this soapbox for many a year now, there's a lot of people in there who, tech evangelists, who are seeing innovation as saying, look, this is our great technological idea that doesn't necessarily answer the problems it needs to do. It might be wonderful, sparkling technology, but does it actually solve a problem that needs to be solved? Now, Kepler Cheuvreux and the team have been involved in, included in the Financial Technologist magazine's most influential fintechs listing. And you put a great article in there around innovation and looking at this, this sort of very subject. And I was reading through it again this morning, and I think it's a very, to me, it makes absolute sense. And I know you and Julia and the team there have really looked at how you can, look at at these issues and opportunities in the business and say, right, how can we utilize technology to really innovate and take things further forward? And what we're looking at for you, for want of a better analogy, is the sort of quarterback to be able to sort of take on that various thing and utilize it in its classic sort of Kaizen sense of taking on it on feedback and improvements from across the various areas of the business all the way right through, and be able to sort of understand what's happening with that business, and then or the issues around the business, and say, right, this is how we can utilize all of this technology to make processes more efficient. And that's a real common theme of the great companies that we've got listed in the magazine as well. Innovation in its sense obviously comes with with its sort of banner of the maverick around it and the creative. But behind the creativity, there's also a huge amount of structure and framework to make innovation really work and last and add value. Tell me a little bit about how you've approached that.
I think that's a great topic, because I think you're absolutely right. I think innovation is very much centered around the creative, that spark of genius that turns out to be this huge benefit for a company. But you're absolutely right that to get to the point where you can continuously innovate and continuously deliver these game-changing functionalities, you need a robust framework. You need a robust process in place. And I think what you need more than anything is this understanding internally that people feel empowered to bring you ideas and to bring forth proposals of how to improve their own workflow. And I think that in technology, there's certainly been a slight, I guess, barrier between technologists and business users, because the technologists, they understand the technology side of it, and business users understand the business users. You tend to get ideas that are slightly siloed, because the technology side of the company are going to propose ideas to improve their life and business users, etc. But we're seeing that new and modern companies, there's actually this mix between technology and business. Going back to our saying about technology is everywhere. So as the barrier to entry for technology is getting lower, I think you see this new influx of business users who are looking to improve, whether that is business intelligence processes, whether that's data analysis, whether that's machine learning. You see business users coming up with ideas of how to use these technologies, because they now understand how these things hang together. And similarly, on the technology side, you see more and more technologists who have a passion for understanding the business problems and can actually propose improvements in how you deal with clients and how you analyze what the consumption is. So it's really interesting to establish that framework where both sides feel empowered to suggest improvements to each other's workflows.
You're absolutely right, and I think this is something which has been another sort of soapbox for me for some time, and I think it's been a feature of the sort of 20 years that I've been in the industry, where you've seen that sort of evolution, and I don't think it gets talked about as much as it possibly should do. Where 20 years ago you had technology and you had business, and it would be almost combative between the two parties, and tech were forcing technology onto business, and business were sort of pushing it to one side. And this was, I guess this goes back to this sort of early electronification of the markets and everything there. Things started to speed up, and then we've had this sort of stasis for probably about another 5-10 years, where technology hadn't really sort of adapted, but you were seeing a much more tech savvy generation come through. And it may be a generational thing, or it may just be an educational thing of people sort of taking or becoming more tech savvy as the world is digitalized alongside that. So all of a sudden now, as you say, there is a case where business people are a lot more technology enabled and technologically competent, and are able to take the ideas and say, right, how does this work for us in our business? And then alongside that, you see a digital technology generation who aren't necessarily the guys in Jesus sandals with long hair in the corner of a room, not wanting to speak to anyone. But you're talking about people there who are actually sort of very interested in how this technology can make the market move. And when you put those two together and there's much more of a fusion, that's where I think the magic can happen to really see innovation develop and move further forward. And that allows us to see some of this new technology, which is sort of sat there and people have been excited about and talking about for quite some time, actually now start to take on a new sort of life form. So we see data having been spoken about for the best part of a decade, with a lot of talk about it being the new gold, etc. But no one really grabbing that and saying, right, how do we make this work? How does this data become actionable insight that makes things move and become better? And that's evolved. That's evolved. Probably a lag for what I would have thought in the financial markets, but it's evolving. We're seeing machine learning and AI being something more than a buzzword now, into things which can actually make a difference. And you've spoken about low code and all the benefits that come into there. Let's start with data in that journey, because it seems to be the sort of core of all innovation at the moment within tech. Tell me a little bit about the opportunities you see there.
Absolutely. And I think that for us, data is obviously crucial, financial services company. And what we're seeing is that often when companies approach data, it's again from a very technology-minded viewpoint, where you start defining and looking at the technologies you can use to solve your data problem. Whereas for us, we approach it slightly differently. We look at the data we have, and we look at what do we think is the impact of being able to centralize that data and democratize access to that data. How can we actually use the reserves of data we have to benefit ourselves? And I think technology comes as a side effect of that, which is a great, from my perspective, is the right way to go about it. Because what we're seeing now is that we already have a data warehouse, if you will, but why are we not able to use that more effectively? What's the missing part? And the answer is never technology. It's about processes. It's about centralizing the different data sources that we have. So a lot of how we approach it is just to try and understand who's going to use the data, how they're going to use the data, and what is the cadence of update and to the data, and so forth. So it's a very interesting problem for us, because we have, with all the different business units that we have a lot of data on our clients and how people are using our services. So again, it's just about understanding what we can do with that data to provide better solutions for our clients. And for us, a lot of it is about the giving that access to our business users. Because if you have a low-code platform where business users can build their own workflows, and whether that's sales to build a reactive workflow to reach out to potential clients, or someone in risk building something that will alert them when special market conditions appear, it all hinges upon data. If you don't solve the data component of that problem, then you're not going to be able to benefit fully from a low-code solution. So that's a little bit where we start. We start looking at the champions of these sort of low-code solutions internally. What kind of data do they need? What kind of data would they like to have access to? And what sort of data sets can they create? Because I think that's an important story that often gets missed, is that it's not just IT creating data sets anymore. It is the actual business users. And some of those data sets are very, very valuable. For instance, to take an example, sales are sitting on a huge amount of data. And a lot of that data is within the human element of that department. But so for us, the challenge is, how can we take some of that data? How can we structure it? How can we share that with other parts of the organization that may benefit from that sort of exposure?
And this is exactly where I think e-commerce has led the field in its utilization of this, and where I think we can take things and pluck a lot more from the e-commerce world to really put a fuse under capital markets, financial technology in general, to be able to learn from that. Because look, when you talk about the sales data and turning the data into processes that allow people to buy better and create better insight and improve processes. I love that the whole concept of a Sainsbury's in North London selling a can of instant coffee, and immediately in Colombia there's a whole load of coffee beans that are being sown immediately because of the whole process of dealing with that. Now, to me, that transfers immediately over to what to similar sort of opportunities in what you can do within in FS. And whilst there are movements there, it is nothing like as slick as I think it could be, and certainly how e-commerce has taken it through, which sort of draws us in from data through that journey through to machine learning and AI and all the opportunities that come into there. That's also something which you're seeing tremendous opportunity in, right?
Absolutely. And I think we're now at an inflection point where AI and machine learning are sort of going past and beyond the buzzwordiness of it, and we're actually seeing it start to solve some real business problems for us. Obviously, it's still early days. It's still very hard for us to reason about how an AI system is working, how it's producing the insights, and I think that component is something that there's a lot of research going into at the moment. But certainly when it comes to recommendations, when it comes to understanding the behavior, it's something that is very important for us. And again, taking a step back and looking at some of the technology aspects of it, being able to leverage it for anomaly detection across the organization is something that historically has been quite technical, quite restricted. But again, if you can take those components, if you can take almost an anomaly detection module and you can place that in your low code workflow, all of a sudden, you have a hugely powerful system where, going back to that compliance or risk sort of scenario, if they can drop in an anomaly detection module into their workflow, all of a sudden they have created for themselves an AI-driven system, which is quite an interesting way of seeing it. I think historically, IT departments have been very good at saying no. Technology has always been their thing, and the last thing you want to do is someone without the right background to come in and build a solution that potentially might compromise the integrity of the general architecture. We sort of have a very different stance to that, where we want our business users to come and solve their own solutions. Our job is less about saying no and more about providing the right sort of guardrails to keep people from hurting essentially the general technology strategy. But within that, there's so much you can do. And I think that what we're seeing in the AI space is these now predefined building blocks that we can drop in and out and really have people solve their own problems in a quite new way.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting, this conversation, and the potential and possibilities are limitless within it. And when you see this technology and the opportunities that it brings, it's genuinely not just it's innovation that that can create an absolute revolution rather than evolution in terms of where the potential of the business can go and what can be achieved from it. And that to me becomes really, really exciting. You've touched on it a few times now as well. Talk to us about this rapidly emerging and much talked about low code movement that we're seeing at the moment. What are the opportunities there?
I think the opportunities there are huge, and I think that again it's a concept that's been around for ages, but I think we're getting to the point where it's so mature that it can actually be a real competitor to a lot of the sort of traditional technology departments. I mean, as an example, if you take something like the Power Platform that Microsoft has, and obviously there are other vendors in this area, it really allows you to define quite complex workflows by yourself just via using a web browser. And I think that's really liberating, because if you connect that to a business intelligence platform, you can pretty much solve a lot of the problems yourself. And again, does this mean that we're going to be less reliant on technology departments? Absolutely not. I think it's a win-win for both sides, really, because what technology can focus on is provide those really value-added services, these bricks, if you will, or modules that you can sort of use in the low code. And then what you do is have the business users self-assemble some of that. And again, going back to machine learning and AI, that anomaly detection module, for instance, can be a very generic one. But once you can start to reuse it across departments, then you have something incredibly powerful. I think that especially when it comes to innovation, people look at these really shiny projects, but I think a lot of the innovation we'll see in the upcoming years are going to be based on, frankly, really quite small and innocent looking processes. It might be someone trying to simplify their emailing process, follow-up process with clients. It might be to look at what's being published in the news and reacting based on the feedback you get from that sort of. Essentially, it's taking scripting to a whole new level where business users without technical background can actually manage and deliver on that. And I think that's going to unlock a new wave of innovation where we can do all of these things, because I think it's easy to forget that if you have a technology background, how much you're automating stuff already. If I want to get information from a web page in a particular way, I might just write a little Python script that will pull that information, reformat it for me, so I can consume it in the format that I'm interested in. And I think, again, that is something that's now opening up to everyone, really, where you can take data from one internal system, reformatted so it makes sense to you, create emails, alerting, and that together with these machine learning modules is just going to create a whole new set of use cases, I think, internally.
Yeah, so look, I think this is, what you've just said there is really interesting, because it sort of ties in with everything you've been talking about, the sort of continued development, of more technologically minded business people, and IT becoming something that becomes a lot more solution orientated to providing that real sort of value and ability to innovate and move further forward and gain advantage. Because look, if we look around tech, whilst it's there about friction reduction, it's there to reduce cost, it's there to make efficiencies, it's there to increase productivity. All of those things are massively important to the success of any business, right? In financial services, we've traditionally seen speed as one of the sort of core elements of trading advantage to people. How can you get better information? How can you have more access to information, better speed, more regulation, more compliance? How can you do everything to increase that advantage to what you're doing? Now, when you've got a tech savvy business and a business savvy technology team, you've got a real advantage that you can take from that and move it further forward. And I think everything you've said there is so forward thinking. It's so exciting, and I know the conversations that sort of came to the ahead of the creation of your sort of role, but it's really exciting to me to see this sort of take action, to see your role develop and see the business sort of really thrive over the course of this year and everything that's moving further forward. So let's move on to that. Let's look at the business and let's look at some of the exciting things that we can expect to see from Kepler Cheuvreux in 2021. So a lot of it will be around innovation, I'm assuming, with your role, and some exciting things that are happening. I know you're sort of looking at various new research offerings, and we've seen sort of an initial news around Kepler Cheuvreux discovery and various other bits and pieces there. Tell us a little bit about what we can expect to see and what's exciting in the company this year.
Like you say, we are looking at research wholesale to see how we can improve, again, a lot of what we discussed in terms of AI and machine learning and automation and data is going to feed into essentially creating a better research product for our clients. But we've also taken a step back and looked at, the delivery mechanism of research. And I think that a traditional research paper is great, but it can be quite intense. It could be 100 pages about a specific topic or a sector, which is very good if you want to really dive deep in this. But we've also identified a different sort of take on it, where we think we can be providing a great product for our clients, a shorter, easier to consume, and something that fits in with everyone's ever so busy schedule. And we call it Kepler Cheuvreux Discovery, which essentially is our ideas generation platform. So what it is quite innovative in that it will deliver our research in a video format, which is quite new in the industry. And a lot of it is focusing on creating a much better relationship between the clients who consume the research and our analysts, who are very, very good at what they do. And we're already seeing a different sort of consumption pattern where people get really excited about certain topics that they might not have been that familiar with, because it's so easy to jump in a video and discuss what's going on in a certain sector. And it's also this whole sort of Zoomification of how people do meetings and engagements nowadays. And we're thinking that this is a good time and a good opportunity for us to think about these things and how we deliver research. And in addition, with Kepler Cheuvreux Discovery, there will be conversations with business leaders, with politicians, with industry experts, for instance. And it's just this really intuitive and immersive experience for our clients, where they can jump into videos, quickly spend a few minutes learning about a new topic, then maybe go on and do something else without having to invest all that time into reading a whole paper. And we obviously think that this is highly complementary to our traditional products, because you really need both. But so far, we've seen very encouraging results with the platform, and it sort of really embodies what innovation means for us, which is to improve the experience and the product for our clients. And so we're very excited to see what the uptake is going forward and how we can further improve that. And we're looking at this from multiple angles, because again, Kepler Cheuvreux Discovery was created to solve a particular pain point, but we're now taking all that experience and knowledge that we've built up in launching that platform and sort of putting it in to other areas of our research products.
Sounds incredible. And I know you're someone who's very interested in sort of developments and opportunities and startups in the space. Who should be reaching out to you? What sort of things are interesting to you at the moment, Anvar? People who are watching this and thinking, right, I can, there's elements here of what Anvar's been talking about that are really interesting. We think we can add value. Who's good for you to be speaking to?
I think that for us, obviously, considering everything we've discussed here, openness is a huge factor for us. I think that the days of siloed systems is gone now. Everyone needs to have an API, and I think that for us, we're again going back to these bricks or modules. We'd love to talk to people who kind of fit into that, where maybe a company is an expert in delivering a certain set of functionalities. We can take that as a module and we can slot that into our low code framework. All of a sudden, it's not an IT conversation, it's a technology conversation where business users can really start leverage this sort of innovative approach almost immediately. And it's also about, I think, anyone who has ideas in this space. As I said before, I think that research is very interesting to me because I have a fresh set of eyes, and given everything that's going on, I think there's huge opportunities in there. But again, the openness is key for us. So I think that we're less interested in looking at wholesale platforms and more anything that fits in these building blocks. And I think that that's something that I don't necessarily think we're alone in this. I think that a lot of people are looking at their internal estates and thinking, "Ooh, can we selectively bring in a piece of the puzzle that solves this problem for us?" And I think that's a much better conversation to have. We're predominantly a financial services company, so we want to be very strategic in how we apply technology, and we would much rather partner with forward-thinking vendors than spend years and years developing something that might not be of interest for us. Because again, it comes back to how we do innovation, where if someone wants an idea, we want to be able to launch that quickly, get feedback and iterate and improve on that idea. We don't want to spend 2 years building up an AI infrastructure just in the hopes that it will be beneficial down the line. So as a company, we are hugely agile, we're hugely flexible in how we do things, and it is important for us that our partners are sort of going down the same trajectory.
And I think it's I could be speaking for many an hour about this, and what I love and the great sort of privilege of this show for me over the last year has been being able to speak to people who are genuinely passionate about what they're doing, and I think that sort of shrieks off the page when you're talking about this sort of stuff. I love seeing people who are grabbing the new and the opportunities within it, and sort of really shaking things up and seeing what can come out. I love the approach you've taken to this. There's so many good people in that business, and sort of being able to hear and understand the sort of opportunities and challenges they're facing, and add some structure and frameworks to that. And that's one of the big things I think I can take away from this is, for me, that sort of innovation, moving away from the sort of creative and maverick, or still sort of keeping that piece in there, but putting it alongside it, that sort of real framework and structure to maximize the opportunity, I think is a really fascinating way to do it. So I'm so pleased you shared that, and I've got no doubt there'll be people there who are queuing up to speak to you afterwards as well. Anvar, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us today and all your insight. Forward to having you back again very soon, I hope.
Awesome. Thank you, Toby, for having me. And yeah, that sounds absolutely great.
Good man. See you soon. And thank you all for watching. We'll see you soon on another episode of Fintech Focus TV. Thanks a lot. Bye now.